So first thing we're going to do is I'm going to add a UV sphere, and what we're going to do is a bowling alley. So this will be basically my sphere, and I'm going to enable rigid body on this, and the whole rigid body panel is available here. And rigid body basically means it's a solid object that responds to physics. So we just turn this on, and if I hit play, which is how you run the simulation, this fell. So basically it's already being evaluated by the physics engine. It has mass and it's falling down to its area. So now we need something for it to actually land on. So if I go and, oh, you know, I'm fine where we were. There we go. We're going to add a cube and toggle it off. And let's get this small and very wide. And the thing you want to make sure of with the cube is that it is slightly below the sphere, or what we're calling the bowling ball, because we're doing a bowling alley. You do not want something like that, because what will happen is when the physics engine turns on, it will think the two items are stuck. So you want to get it as close as you can to that area. And this is our bowling alley, our bowling lane. So now I can pull the ball back to the beginning, and we'll select the lane. And in order to get the lane to actually work, we need to also activate it as well. So we're going to do a rigid body for it, and you probably figure out if we go to hit play, both of them are going to fall. So actually what we need to do for this one is we need to switch it to passive. And what that means is that rigid body will be calculated, but it's passive, it's not going to move. So we're done, and we got that next step done. Now I need to get the ball to actually move. And we already had the sphere at the one location, so we'll select the ball, and at the beginning frame we'll basically add a key. So object, animation, insert keyframe, and we'll just do a location. And then we want to advance this, and I'm going to go over to 10, roughly 10, and I'm going to move the ball and have it all the ways over here. So object, animation, insert key, location. So now if we go back and we hit play, it's basically going to move between the two. And you can see it's rather kind of sudden the way it's set up, so we need to change some other things. Okay, so now we need to go between being dynamic and animated. So I'm going to go back to frame, I'm going to go back one frame, okay, frame 9. And at this point I'm going to insert a key, and this has animated off. And then I'm going to go back another key, and at this point I am going to toggle on animated and insert a keyframe. So if everything works, it turns off at that point, and what's going to happen is it's going to calculate the velocity based on that data, and then when the animated turns off, it'll switch it over to the physics engine. And this is how you basically get to put energy into a system. So if I hit play, you'll see that now the ball keeps on going and it falls off. So we have that set up. Last thing we need is a pin, and I'm just going to do one pin. Obviously you can do a lot more. Let me just snap this back to center. Mesh, cylinder, 1. Scale this down, make it tall and skinny. Okay. And from top view, and we'll just move this back here, and actually just to see what happens, let's get this set up, and we're going to enable rigid body for this, and we can just kind of keep it as is. We don't have to change anything else. And then I'm going to do a Shift D and copy one, and Shift D and copy another. Let me switch over to wireframe and make sure. Okay. So we got that, and everything's good. And let's go back to shaded view and rewind and see what we got. And you can see that, okay, so we got our simulation. You can see it's slowed down a little as far as the frame rate. So what we need to do is we need to actually, it'll render out real time, so we can just hit the animation, it'll render out all the keys, but it might not play real time just because of the level of complexity. In this fourth demo, we're going to look at basic setup of particles. I'm going to get rid of snap center. I'm going to add a plane, and we're going to use this for our emitter. And let's increase the size of this to 10 by 10, and so let's increase the height and set the Z to 5. And the reason I'm doing that is if we go to the camera, you can see that basically it's above the camera. What this is we're going to create just add a basic material to this. So add a new material, and that's all we need to do to set up the emitter. So at this point, we're going to go and select the Particles tab, and we're going to add a particle system. We're not going to touch anything else. And just hit play, and you can see all of a sudden this emitter is generating a bunch of particles, and they're filling up the view that we have. So I'm going to switch this out. If I go to render this image right now, we get these giant stars, and this is your default object. And what we're going to do is we're going to modify this. So we're going to go into set up the properties for the particles, and we're going to switch it over to a line and keep our tail at, let's knock this tail down to 0.15, and let's render and see what we got now. Okay, so we got some streaks. The one thing that's happening right now is it's dark, and that's because the emitter itself is being rendered as well. So if we turn that on, when we go to render, now the light's coming through, and you can see that we already have something that looks like basic rain. So now we can actually render this out. What I'd recommend is if you go back to the beginning and you watch play, you'll see there's kind of a warm-up phase. So I wouldn't start this rendering until frame 40. So we'll go and we'll change our settings, knock this down to 25%, 15 frames a minute, second, and start frame is 40, end frame is 100, and let's go down and save this out. Okay, let's render it out and see what we get. So here's the rendering, and I'm just going to play through just so you can see it. So you can overlay this. A lot of times people composite these over images, and you could use something as basic as this to simulate rain. If you slowed down the drops and made them smaller, you could have snow as well. So we're done doing that one. So let's go and do another. So factory setup, go start. This time we're going to do something slightly different. Rather than making a big plane, we're going to make a very small plane. So I'm going to change the plane size down to 0.5 and 0.5, so this is really small. And the reason why we want to do that is we want a very dense area that's basically going to be emitting the particles. So we'll go in and add our particle system, get that set up, and zoom in a little. And at this point, if we hit play, everything falls down. It goes up and then it falls down. So what we want to do is we want to figure out a way that we can actually get the particles to go up. And what we can do is we can change the velocity, and I'm going to change this to 0.15. And now if I rewind and I hit play, we get it, and they pop up a little and they go back down. The reason why this is an issue is because the field weight, which is the default forces that influence the gravity, is set to 1. If we set it to 0 and rewind and hit play, now it actually goes up. Now it's going up pretty consistently. So what we'll do is we're going to add a little bit of randomness to the actual direction and the force. So there's a little bit of a shake-up and a little bit of variety. So 2.5 and wind up. And it's not something that's going to be noticeable, but you can see once you get to the top, it starts to spread out in other directions and kind of change. So now we're going to add a wind object. So we're just going to add an empty. And I'm going to bring this over, and actually you can kind of just keep it as is if you want. And we're going to go and we're going to add a force, and we're going to change this to wind. And you can see we already have a wind that's showing up. We need to rotate this on 90 degrees. And now if we rewind and we hit play, let me select here, you can see that the wind is already influencing and affecting everything. So this is pretty handy. You can get a lot of complexity doing this pretty quickly. What we want to do at this point is we want to get everything to actually show up. If I do a quick render image on this, you'll see that we get this streak and it looks a little funny. We can also see the emitter as well. So we're going to go back and toggle off the render emitter. That's step one. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to keep it at halo, and halo is kind of the star, and we're just going to go in and change it. So we're going to go in material, and in order to do this we have to actually create a material. So we're going to do new, and we're going to switch this over to halo, and you can see this is what it's showing. And if we render this out, okay, it looks pretty much the same. So the alpha for the halo we're going to dock down to 0.1, and what that's going to do is you can see it's going to make it very transparent, so if we get the overlay it doesn't look too crazy. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to toggle on the option of texture, and what this will do is rather than making it solid, let me just render and show you what we got at this point. Okay, so there's really no breakup or any texture inside of it. So if we toggle on texture, and we're going to go and we're going to add a new texture that's clouds, and go down, and what we want to do with this is make sure that it influences the alpha, which is the transparency of the object. And at this point, if we render out, you can see that there's a little bit more variety because it's actually defining some of the transparency based on that. So the final thing we want to do is we want to get so it actually fades out over time, and the way to do that is to add another type of texture which controls behaviors of the particle itself. So this is the material texture. Go to the next tab, and we want to make sure that we have the emitter selected when we do this. We basically want to go to the next tab, and these are particle textures. And we're going to add a new one, and we're not going to leave cloud this time, we're going to do a blend. And we are going to go from, we're going to turn on the ramp. Okay, and colors, we're going to open this up and choose ramp. And the other thing we want to do is right now it's going from transparent to opaque. We want to flip this. And now what will happen is as these change, now right now we don't necessarily see anything. What we want to do is we want to go down and we want to change this to density. So over time the density is going to decrease. We can also do it with life, so we can set up for different options. Oh, we don't, yeah. Time, let's rewind it and hit play, and there we go, we get those set up, and render image and render it out, and now it's basically getting a little lighter over time, and we can also control this so they don't last as long. So those controls, you can change color, a lot of things. That's a pretty subtle application of it, but it's something we can do. So I'll render this out real quick and we'll take a look at it. So here's the rendering. And you can see I also didn't warm it up or preset, but kind of gives you an idea. You can adjust the density and number of particles in it to make it thicker or thinner, but that's kind of the basic idea of how you go about setting up something like Steam.